Hey guys, welcome to Deadlock Daily number 5. My name's October. So today, I just wanted to do something pretty chill. Just gonna talk for a bit and actually make a new Vindicta build for myself ever since she's been buffed. And also, I just felt like my build was kind of outdated and needed some changes because I've tried some new things and read some new items and just, I think, gotten a little bit better at the game recently, so I wanted to change some things. Here's the old build. You can see it here. It really ult-centric. Didn't really understand the whole investing thing, the 4.8k thing. You can see it's not super late in the build, but it's later than it probably should be, so we're going to move on from that. But, I'm just going to have this play in the background while I'm talking, because I have some things I wanted to talk about. Really just some general patch feels and just kind of vibe for how I'm feeling with this channel, and I'll talk about the build a little bit as I get it more complete, but for a while on screen, you're just going to see me picking out items, and then I'll eventually be organizing it. Not every item I pick out is final, but I made a list on my phone and was pulling out of it just to, try some new items and see what I wanted to put in, what I didn't, and I ended up cutting a lot of items, so it's going to start out a lot more than it actually ends up being. So, yeah. But anyways, let's talk about it. So I've tried in some of my past videos, the last couple, to talk about just general feels for this patch and whatever's going on. And I gotta say that, I think that for me, I'm really struggling as a sort of mid-low elo player to get used to the new balance, but that's normal because I wasn't perfect at dealing with the old balance anyways. I just got used to the BS. And now there's new BS to deal with. I mean, Calico is a very different character from anything that was meta last patch. So, it's just going to take a lot of time for me to get used to. But, the biggest thing that I think I've noticed with this patch that's been giving me issues is just the community sentiment towards, this game and the way people are feeling, it feels like. I mean, Deadlock, it got a lot of positive feedback in the last few months because of the big character release. It had its highest player peak ever, 200,000 something players when the heroes were releasing. You got all kinds of new people trying it. Everything felt fresh. Everything felt new. And so the game was sort of at a high at that point. Well, I think about 3 weeks to a month removed from the last character being implemented. And now there's nothing new. The only thing new is the balance patches, and for several weeks, we kind of had to deal with a relatively stale meta. I mean, Celeste, Abram, Silver, at least down in my elo, those three were just really dominant. Some other characters, high pick rates like Rem and stuff, you would see them all the time. And so when this new patch came out, I think a lot of people received it originally very positively. I was unsure because I was actually really busy the day that the patch notes dropped, so I didn't really get to read them until later in the day, in the evening almost. And I was really unsure because, like I said, I don't understand all the number stuff super well, the spirit scaling numbers, the tweaks to abilities on characters that I don't play or didn't see a lot down here. I didn't really understand how that works, so I sort of was kind of waiting on other people's opinions. And then we started seeing the stuff, You had turbo-yoked Wraith. She's been reined in a little bit. I mean, Calico is just a dominant character, I would say, probably in everything outside of just the upper echelons of the game. And, yeah, I mean, it's very different, because you still have a character like Celeste. You still have people like her that are at the top. But there's a lot of new characters up there at the top, and with that becomes a lot of new BS, and especially because, in MOBAs like this, you typically are a top-tier character, not because, oh, this character requires X amount of skill or whatever. It's just the scaling is broken with the way that they function as a character, or certain item combinations are broken with the way they function as a character. We see a lot of characters are really benefiting heavily from Life Strike as an item. I mean, the item is crazy. Calico is one of the characters that benefits. I mean, Billy, just all kinds of characters are benefiting pretty heavily from that item. But, yeah. It's just, it's very difficult for a player like me to get used to these new changes, and I've been complaining a lot about it, like Calico and Wraith in particular, Doorman as well. It's just like new BS to have to deal with, and it's going to have an adjustment period for me because I wasn't even that good at dealing with the old stuff. But like I said, it feels to me like there's been a little bit of a sentiment change in the community. So what do I mean by that? Well, so the new patch drops, and originally everybody is pretty positive about it. I see most people being like, hey, the game needed a massive shakeup. This is a massive shakeup. The tier list really got kind of flipped on its head. I think we have a brand new, like, top 3 characters now. There's still some characters from last patch that are good, like Celeste. But, like, Abrams has fallen off pretty heavily. I think Silver, at least, she's gotten a couple of micro buffs since then, but I think that Silver has fallen off pretty heavily, and then Abrams is obviously definitely not super, super good anymore. Which is a good thing, because Abrams and Silver both needed to be reined in. Celeste, they actually made some changes that I liked with her. They gave her some of the movement stuff back and lowered the numbers on her abilities. I feel like people like the movement stuff, and people really don't like the numbers on the abilities. And so I'm glad that they managed to make that change, because that was what I felt like was my frustration with the character. It wasn't the movement, even though it is broken, because it's kind of her thing. It was that the numbers on the kit were broken as well. So, yeah, but regardless of balance, right, like, much like me, I think most of the community just needs to get used to things. I mean, we're not used to this new patch, and we're not used to the BS, so we're not kind of like expecting it every game. You know, you expect Silver to run at you every game in last patch, and you kind of become numb to it eventually. You still complain, it still sucks when you get cheesed by it, but it's like, you're used to it, you know? And you can see I'm struggling to figure out how to format this stuff because I am so bad at it. I've only ever made a couple of builds, and they're pretty ugly looking. I end up cleaning it up a little bit more at the end, but right now, this is going to be ugly for a little bit until I clean it up. So just feast your eyes upon that beautiful dinner plate that is this build, I guess. The biggest problem I'm having now with this patch is because the community sentiment has turned a little bit against it. You know, the novelty has kind of worn off. You know, you've not got as many new people now. Most people that have been playing in the last patch, even if they're new, they're now getting to the point where they've gotten a good grasp on some of the general knowledge of the game, and that's when the frustration starts to creep in. When everything's not new, when everything's not fresh, then you start getting frustrated about stuff. And I think that we were getting there at the end of last patch, but now that we've just got a whole new level of BS to deal with, and people are sort of realizing that this is just what MOBAs are, some people like me are getting a little bit more frustrated than we probably should be. And I think the community as a whole at the top is kind of the same way. There's not a lot really to go on right now because there's no ranked mode or anything. I mean, you're just playing for the love of the game. And so when things feel frustrating and new and hard to understand, or, you know, you played a character and they got nerfed, or you play a character and they got, like, turbo buffed and now everybody else is playing them, I can understand the frustration with that. My biggest gripe, though, has got to be this community sentiment. Now, I've already brought up why I think it might be happening a little bit. I think that, you know, some of the loud minority of players have been hiding for a little bit, you know, underneath the glowing positivity that the game was receiving at the time. Well, now they're not hiding anymore, and they are sort of the louder voices, I think. And it's not just people that I think are tourists or from outside of the community. It's people inside as well. All the viewership numbers and stuff like that has gone down a little bit, as you expect. Deadlock has always, and will always, until it gets out of this invite-only stage, go through these big cycles, where it gets large amounts of players, and then it falls off for a while. But, yeah, the community mental has been my biggest issue. In the last patch, did not play, I think I could count on both of my hands the amount of games I played where people were just miserable and toxic on the mic. Now, I am in lower elo, and so that's where a lot of the newer players were, and I think that a lot of them probably didn't even want to calm because they didn't understand what was going on. But more recently, there's just been people, man, that are just so miserable and whiny all the time. I mean, it gets to a point where I even start getting myself frustrated and my mental starts getting toxic because I'm just having to listen to people in Emissary and Archon games just whine about how we're not playing perfectly or we made a mistake. Like, the other day, we're playing a game. We've got a Fed Hayes player on our team. The Hayes player wants to do mid. Now, look, we could have done mid as a team, but I don't think it was anywhere near guaranteed. It wasn't like, oh, they're down 5 and we're going to go side lane. They were down, I think, 2, maybe 3 with the third coming back soon. And it was like, let's do mid boss. When I think there were other things we could do because most of the rest of us were down as a team. Now, we can debate whether that decision is the right one. Doing mid is something that a lot of lower elo lobbies and players, myself included, are very cautious about. I typically like to just do it when I feel like with 90% certainty we can get it. And because I'm not very confident, there's probably times I could get it that we don't. But this player, right? They're just whining this whole time. We don't get mid, they die, they complain on the mic over and over and over for just like 2 or 3 minutes. They are just whining, and then they type in all chat that they're whining about us not doing mid boss. And I sort of just lose it on them, man. Like, at this point, I had been in 3 or 4 games where people they're just being so whiny and so whimpery on the mic, and it's just like, oh, we're not playing perfect, we're not doing everything I want to do, so therefore, I'm going to sit here and be a miserable bastard on the mic and flame everybody else. Okay, man, look, I want to win too. If the person had just said, right, like, hey, I think we should have done mid there, we made a mistake, we move on with our life, everything's fine. But just people whining so much about people in Emissary and Archon games not playing perfectly. Like, what do you expect, man? That's the reason we're down here. We're not going to play perfectly. And like I said, you can critique people, but you need to do it in a constructive way. If you want to critique the team in a constructive way, I have no issue with that, even if it means you get on to me if I make a mistake. I would much rather somebody tell me, hey, I don't think you should have done that, and here's why, as opposed to somebody be like, dude, what the heck are you doing, man? Can you just lock in or something? Like, you're feeding so hard, and not actually tell me what the mistake is. Well, after 3 or 4 games of this, I sort of just lost it on them, and then, you know what? They said, I'm gonna mute Mike, and I'm playing the rest of the game by myself. And for the rest of the game, they proceeded to feed their brains out, up the side lane, into the enemy base by themselves, and we lost the game. And what's crazy is even though we're down, the enemy team pushes into our base, and we win the team fight, really, against them. Like, we take down 4. And if our Hayes had just not been on full tilt and was actually helping the team, we could have won the game. But this is what I mean about people's toxic mental, man. It's like, if you don't do exactly what I want you to do, everybody's gonna know about it, and it's not my fault, and all this stuff. I don't know, man. It's really frustrating, and I don't know if other people are having that experience as well, where people are just being super miserable in games. Especially, like, some of these newer characters, Calico and stuff like that, these overtuned characters, people are just being so miserable on them. And I don't want to tell them that it's because I think their character's broken and they're sort of carried, but that's kind of the truth. Then again, though, I played Abrams last patch, and I didn't lose a game on him last patch, and that's because he was broken, and I was carried on him. So yeah, that's sort of my biggest concern with what's going on in the community. My games have just been really toxic. I released a video the other day that was like the least toxic Deadlock match, and we just had an Infernus player on our team who's just calling us all idiots the whole time. And there are times when he's got a point. I'm not going to pretend that I'm being wrong, like, that I didn't make mistakes or that we as a team didn't make mistakes. But, sorry about that. My cat was messing with something and I had to fix it. I'm going to try and make sure that things aren't out of sync, but if they're a little bit out of sync, I'll try and fix it. But yeah, just the toxic mental, man. It really drives me crazy because I can be just sitting here playing a game of Deadlock, obviously trying to win, but I don't play perfect. That's the reason I'm down here in Archon or in Emissary or whatever you want to say, whatever I tend to fluctuate between on that day. like, I'm trying to win, and I like calming with people, but it makes it really miserable when people are just so toxic in chat, for no reason, especially. Like, there's no reason to be a jerk about this kind of stuff. And I get it, you know, it's MOBA, and that's what people do. People play MOBAs, and they're toxic about it, because MOBAs are a very, you know, competitive, very kind of like autistic style of game. You have to be very, very invested to play them. But still, man, like, constructive, just be constructive. No matter what rank you're in, if you want to criticize people, the only people that you should really jump are people that are actively, like, just throwing the game intentionally. Not making mistakes in throwing the game, but, you know, if you got somebody with 20 deaths on your team in 30 minutes into the game, which I also did, and they also decided to be toxic to the rest of us, this is just what I mean. Like, everybody's just toxic, man. And it's crazy because in every single game that we had a toxic team that I played the other day, we lost. Every single game that people were toxic to each other, we lost. And the one game where the team was sort of being encouraging or just kind of calming, not being like super upset after mistakes, you know, just kind of being like, oops, or whatever like that, that was the game that we won. Shocker. And we didn't just win, we won hard. So, community mental is just a big, big issue that I'm having to deal with right now. And I think part of that is matchmaking. Matchmaking is really wide because the player base has shrunk significantly. You know, it's still at good levels. It's not like December 2024, January 2025 levels where you're down to like 7,000 players at peak. But it's, you know, it has shrunk, and there's still going to be issues with that, like there always is, because it's in the invite-only alpha, and they're still figuring that stuff out. But, yeah, so that's kind of what I'm thinking. Let me know if you're feeling that, and if there's anything else about this patch that you're not liking as much, just let me know. I mean, I think that's my biggest thing for me. So let's talk about the build a little bit here. So I personally, when I play Vindicta, I like to do like a hybrid style build that's ult-centric. I've played a build that was very gun-heavy, and I'm not a super big fan. I know that Vindicta is a gun character, but I like the ultimate. That's the thing that drew me to her originally as a character. Like, hitting 2 or 3 snipes on people, getting a 3k like that is what I love. So, I'm trying to build something that maximizes that, but does give me options. I haven't quite gotten to all that yet. Excuse me. You'll see here in a minute that I get a lot of the late tier items in. The biggest thing that I've struggled with as a player is I didn't understand the investment stuff on my last build. I made it a long time ago and just did a couple of tweaks. I didn't understand the investment stuff super well. I understand it a lot more now, so that's been factored into the way this build is. And I also didn't really... I tended to build a lot of my things left to right and didn't understand a lot of the counter items. Well, my last build had all the counter items in it, but it still had a lot of like the left to right stuff. And I wanted to give myself late game options. So this build you're going to see, it's got a main core here in the middle, and then it's got a bunch of late game options that I'm getting to. You know, with options to go gun, with options to go vitality, with options to maximize spirit. Because I, as a player, have gotten a little bit better at recognizing those things. I'm not always perfect when I buy them. And I don't want you to think that I think this build is optimal, because I don't think this build is optimal. You know, I think that Vindicta is definitely the better way to go. I think gun characters are just pretty good. I think they're better up until you get to like the super high ranks. If you can play a gun carry, you were just good to go. Yeah, I don't really know. I didn't really think about what I was going to say if I got to this point and I wasn't quite done yet, but yeah, I've been playing a lot of the new Vindicta. She feels a lot better, a lot more consistent. I don't think she's like turbo broken either, which is what I was afraid of. I really thought that when I saw the patches that she was going to be like a top 5 character and be one of the most hated characters in the game. And I think that if Vindicta was on the last patch, like this version of Vindicta was on the last patch, I think she's a pretty clear like top 5 character. But because the patch brought so many characters up in strength, like, she's barely even, like, a top 10 character. Now, once you start getting closer to 10, I think it gets arguable, like, who you have higher and lower. But, I mean, I don't think that she's a top 5 character by any means, and she is really, really, really good in this patch. A lot more consistent, just a lot better. They changed a couple of the ways she scales. So, yeah. Something I had done on my last build is I would build Surge of Power on ult. Now, I know it's not the best because you'd have to shoot with your ult to proc Surge of Power, so this time I'm giving myself options with it. I was trying to figure out where to put it in the build. And that's another thing that I really struggle with when I'm making these builds, is just organizing them left to right, like what kind of items I want. So what you see here is probably not going to be final, but this is just like my general vibe for what I think I would need to buy these items, like what order I would need to buy them in. I'm also not super detailed on these late game items because I haven't tried a lot of them, and I'm just gonna have to try some of them in different situations. I've seen Inhibitor used in a lot of Vindicta builds. I've never used it, so but I did use it in the last build I had, the Ace build that I got off of the Vindicta Deadlock Discord. And so I'm going to try it sometimes when I feel like it's applicable. I will say, even though I like to do ult-centric build for the mid-game, I do like to, like, hard build gun in the late game. Crippling Headshot, Lucky Shot, I like both of those items. Spiritual Overflow is sort of a hybrid item, but yeah. Making builds is hard, man. Like, trying to just figure out how to not make a build too expensive, but also make sure that you have flex spots for if you need counter items. It was something I didn't understand when I first started playing. Like, my first build was horrendous. And now, I will say, it used to be a lot more complex because they've lowered the amount of items since I originally started playing. For those of you that remember, it used to have 16 item slots, which is crazy, I will say. So, yeah. And they used to be limited to, like, what you could buy, if I remember right. I think it was 4 gun, 4 spirit, 4 vitality, and then 4 flex options. Oh, man, those were the days. The builds used to be a lot more complicated and a little bit, I don't want to say a little bit deeper, but just, like, just deeper in a different way. I like that it's limited a little bit because the late game is so crazy in Deadlock anyways, with when you get a bunch of items. Like, once you get past 50k souls on most people, or 45k souls, most people have got their, like, turbo busted items, and everybody's doing close to their max potential value. And I think it's nice that they tuned it down a little bit. But, yeah, I wanted to try a bunch of new items that I've never tried. I had Mystic Reverb in a build once. I've used Mercurial Magnum. I just... Goodness, I'm gonna take a sip of water. It's alright, this is gonna be super chill. Like, I'm probably not even gonna really edit most of this stuff out. But, I tried Mercurial Magnum on this character. I just wasn't a huge fan of the way that it functioned. Now, I had it on Ultimate because I'm an idiot, so if I had it on Crow or something like that, it probably would have been nicer. Some notable items you might see missing from here that you would see in other builds. Like I said, it's sort of a hybrid build, but I like to build ult, so you won't see Alchemical Flask in here, which is an item that I've seen that in the Vindicta Discord was recommended pretty heavily. But that's also partially because I don't really like building Stake. I don't think Stake is terrible by any means. I think it's very good. But I think it's the worst part of her kit, in my personal opinion, before people get on me. And I know my elo is probably showing with that take, but I just think that it's good for what it does, but I don't think that it gets super, super better when you upgrade it, outside of the cooldown reduction, right? I think it stays a pretty consistent flat value of how valuable it is. Now, you could build it, but I think that's kind of lame, personally. I wouldn't want to do that. Because I just like Crow, especially new Crow. It's a lot better, a lot more consistent. You know, a little bit less AoE, like giant AoE, because you can't bounce it to a bunch of people, but for what it does, I think it's just better. We're getting close to the end of the build here. I've gotten everything organized the way I want it to, and I think I'm going to start doing annotations now. Yeah, on some of these lane items and stuff like that, and then the counter items. Don't expect them to be super specific, because there's some items, like I said, I haven't tried a lot of, like Siphon Bullets, Inhibitor, Spirit Burn. I don't think I've ever used on Vindicta. Armor Piercing Rounds, I don't think... I've used it before, but, like, very niche. I've never put it in a build before. So, don't expect these to be super, super detailed annotations. I will put the build ID in the end if anybody's interested in trying it, but I imagine I'm going to get many comments if people do watch this video telling me that I did everything wrong and I should have built these items instead. But, yeah. So, something I do like to do on Vindicta that I've done, as you can see, I said I like to do hybrid, but I think fire rate is very important. Now, there's no Swift Striker. I don't like Swift Striker as an item, and I had too many lower tier gun items anyways, like Recharging Rush, and I think Opening Rounds is pretty good because it gives you the Spirit power bonus. But I love Burst Fire, and then Spiritual Overflow helps with your fire rate, and Surge of Power helps with your fire rate. The one weakness, and they changed Vindicta this way, they lowered her ammo count. The one big weakness that I see here is that you don't have as much ammo. Titanic Magazine is an item I took out because I could not justify putting it in here with all these other items that I think give you more value for what they do. Like I said, Recharging Rush will give me a charge of my ult back. And I think that's better than just having more ammo. Now, I think it does a little bit less extra weapon damage, but Vindicta's weapon damage scales anyways, so it scales well anyways. I'm not super worried about that. And then at the bottom here, you see I've got a lot of utility items. Dispel Magic, it's nice that that's become not a requirement for her anymore, now that Counterspell works. Like, that is one of the best changes they could have made to her. And then the Crow rework is really nice as well, and I think Crow is really good if you build into it. I've never done a Crow build. That build I tried did it a little bit, but I would be interested to try one out someday. But yeah, ult is just too much like crack for me, even though I'm kind of terrible at hitting it. So as we get closer to the end here, I want to see kind of what the maximum value of this is. I'm sure I'm going to show that at some point. I think it was in the low 40... I think it was in the 40k range, 50k at like absolute max, which I like a lot better. I don't like these builds that go into like 60, 70k range, because at that point, like, you're just starting to buy a whole bunch of extra items. And if you're getting to that point in the game, like, I don't know if I've ever gotten to 70k farm on Vindicta. She's not a character that scales super well late into the game. But yeah, so we're wrapping this up here. I know I keep saying that. I've only got a couple of minutes left in the recording, I believe. I can double check this before I make a mistake. I actually can't double check it. So I'm just gonna keep rambling, I guess, and this is gonna stay in the video because this is just a super chill, fun time, just talking, me and you, really romantically, and not seductive is the wrong word, but intimate. That's what I was looking for. This is a very intimate conversation between me and you about my builds. I guess the other thing I can talk about now that I've talked about the build a little bit is I just want to say thank you again. Like, I did not expect, beyond my wildest dreams, to have uploaded a few videos and gotten like 2,000 channel views. Now, 750 of them is on a YouTube short, but I got 1,000 views on my first video that I uploaded for Deadlock. The Deadlock does have a decision to make. And I just want to thank you for that. People were really supportive, and I think we had a good conversation about the topic in that video. And I brought awareness to something that a lot of people didn't know about, which, you know, I think that I talk about it a little bit in the video, but I think that some of that stuff's going to be added into the game anyways. But it's nice to just have people talk about it and, you know, tell me things, give me different ideas that I didn't realize while making the video. So thank you for everybody who interacted with that and everybody who didn't and just watched it or liked it or subscribed. We are 1 subscriber away from 25, although I did get a bunch of them. I say a bunch. I did get probably 6, 7, haha, funny number, number of subscribers back when I did rival stuff. So not every one of them is Deadlock subscribers, but hey, it still says that I have 24, so thank you for that. I did not expect to get any subscribers really from the last video. I expected it to get like 30 views and then me just keep on making stuff. But I was very thankful that the YouTube algorithm and people shared it or whatever, and it was awesome. I'm still trying to get a flow for how I feel about making videos like this and how I want to do them, title them, all that stuff. I mentioned that in the other videos. You might see me experimenting, changing thumbnails, changing titles often. Just until I get what I want. I don't know how to title these. Do people think, like, do they want me to title them Deadlock Daily and then whatever that title is? Or do I just title it and put it in the Deadlock Daily playlist that I have, and at the beginning of the video I'll just be like, it's Deadlock Daily number 5 or whatever. I don't know. You let me know if you happen to be watching this and you get this far, like, what you think I should do about that. And a couple of other things. I've been having a lot of technical issues. That's part of the reason why I haven't been uploading this every day, is I keep making mistakes that early YouTubers make, just like dumb stuff. You can see me just testing stuff out here. I don't know why I was doing this, but I've been having all kinds of issues. You know, the other day I recorded a reaction to the hotfix patch they released a couple days ago. And then when I switched over to Deadlock, I didn't realize that OBS had stopped because I closed the window. I had it set to window capture. And if you've used OBS, like, when you set it to capture a certain window, I guess it stops recording in certain instances if you close out of those windows. Which is weird because it doesn't stop recording when I close out of Deadlock if I'm recording Deadlock. But yeah, so I went and played like a whole game and talked about stuff, and then I realized that it didn't record any of it, and I just had audio, so I've had all kinds of issues. But that's why there's not been daily uploads. I'm still learning, and it's okay that I'm still learning because that's what this is for. Nobody's really watching anyways. But yeah, I think we're getting close to the end of the video. Thank you for watching. I know this has been chill, off the cuff. Sorry for the stutters and sometimes scatterbrainness of it, or if I repeated myself. But yeah, appreciate all you. Have a good one.